What's up, guys? Drew here, bringing you another episode in the Let's Talk series. So we brought back another guest. He was on the previous episode. Hopefully, you guys already checked it out. So,
Hi, this is Arnold. How everybody's doing?
and
What it is, life first in the building. Let's get at it.
normally we talk about personal development, spiritual growth, and current events. So, without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Let's talk about Black Code.
What the correlation to this is with the Jim Crow laws, because obviously you learned about that a little bit, right? I just never heard about black codes, but it does seem very similar, right?
Yeah, because I feel like it's an ongoing thing. All you keep doing is changing the name. It's the same problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's that's
exactly.
the reoccurring thing. It's like you'll change the name, and at the time when you hear the new name, you're like, oh, it's something good, it's something good. But come to find out later on down the road, you're like, wait, it's the same problem that we were dealing with before. So and that's the thing that I wrote down after watching that video. I was like, what's the difference between then and now?
I agree with that.
What's the new form of slavery?
Yeah,
They know that, the people that were slaves, they don't have nowhere to go. So, what I mean? Of course you're gonna need to get a job or some form of income to take care of your family.
to kind of answer my question, black codes was what it was, the name of it, but Jim Crow laws was essentially what it was.
Oh,
So
okay.
they are kind of the same thing.
Mm.
Just to clear that up, because I wanted to make sure I did some, I looked it up really fast. So black codes is what they, I guess, was the official name for it,
Mhm.
but the Jim Crow laws is what folks ended up kind of morphed into that, because that's essentially what happened there, right?
Yeah.
I'm always you could add some clarity on this, I guess.
Oh no. That's a fact. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
because that's cool.
Mm.
I mean, what makes it very interesting to me about that is that, right? So it's like it's a setup, right? They tell you, all right, listen, you're free, but you need to have X, Y, and Z in order to remain free. Because at the end of the day, obviously, the goal was to try to get them back, right? They said, or if you got caught, you had to sign a contract with with someone, a white person, right? And they had to sign this contract. And if they didn't sign this contract, then you would essentially have to work. They'll take your debt and then you work it off. So what's the difference? It was just kind of like the whole thing with it behind Jim Crow, right? It was just another way to enslave you, just not make it seem like they're trying to enslave you. They
Yeah,
make it seem like you're free, but then you're really not free,
that's
right? And then
sugar.
obviously that just morphed in years and years and years, which I would like, if we kind of take that, really try to examine that, right, from there and just follow that timeline to where it is now,
Mm,
right? Because obviously things have evolved and things have changed, but they're kind of like back to your point, Drew, it has stayed the same.
exactly.
Because it's the same game. The police, we're incarcerated at a higher rates than any other race in America, right? So we're in jail, we're doing free labor, same thing, right? But the game is to obviously get us there. So once they get us in, then they're able to now say, okay, you're going to do this or do that for this. You're making pennies on the dollar, as we all know.
Hmm.
But that's very interesting. But
Which
Exactly.
even to your point, right? Which they have it's written into laws that pretty much states that once you are incarcerated to the system, then you are then a slave. So there's nothing that will then protect you. That's it. You're a slave. And then even to further your point, right? When you think about it, right? Who is the most incarcerated individuals? We know black people, and that's a fact,
yeah,
right? So ultimately, right? When you think about it, right? So they're getting us to where they are continuing their pipeline to jail, right? So that's continuing. And then when you look at it from a perspective of how they're maintaining and how they're controlling us out here, right, through execution, right? So hey, if you get on the line, boom, bullet to the head, that's it. You already know what it is. Unfortunately, the what is then drawn parallel to that is this constant narrative, right? And the constant narrative being that we, right, are always perceived to be in the position that where we are the aggressor, right? And how we get there is through conditioning, and we already spoke about that. Check out video 7 where we talked about who pretty much who gains in that particular scenario, right? But needless to say, right? So when you have this perception about how you are as a people, right, where we know for a fact, for the most part, right, when you just look around your own community, we don't operate like that with one another. But more importantly, when we look within our homes, right, we understand what's happening right now. So we are educating our kids. So it's unfortunate that we continue to keep looking at things from a perspective of a narrative that we understand is more destructive as opposed to an uplifting message, right? Because we could choose to put the real narrative out there, but it's just more convenient to keep this particular narrative going. And what we do, we just keep it, and then we then tell ourselves, well, yeah, so when we see it happen, we're like, well, damn, but what did he do? Was he being aggressive? Was he being extra? Was he really listening, to the officer commands, right? Literally. So we always view ourselves from a perspective of guilt, as opposed to why is the exchange not happening like how it would have happened had it been, someone, who was on the other side, in that sense.
You're right, bro. And I feel like based on the narrative, we tend to adjust, right? We adjust ourselves to fit with the narrative. But we need to get to the point where we understand that, hey, that narrative that they're trying to paint, we have to start working on changing that. And like we already talked about in terms of the celebrities, they're not really gonna aid us in terms of changing the narrative because they're a part of the agenda. They're getting paid to do what they do. So sitting here and waiting for them to make a move, it's not gonna happen. So it's gonna be up to the regular average person to do that. And is there ever gonna come a day where we're not painted like that? I don't think so. It's just to keep the same cycle. It's the same cycle. It's been going around and around and around. And there's a book that I would love for y'all to check out. It's called Fire's Next by James Baldwin. Yeah, James Baldwin. And if you read that book, it's legit. Even though it was written in the 1960s, it's legit what we're dealing with right now. In terms of all of that's been going on, how do we move past that and work on changing the narrative on a bigger scale? Because obviously, like you say, we always talking about working together, unity, and things like along those lines. So it's like, how do we change the narrative on a bigger scale?
When you think of that, right, as an individual, right? So for the most part, in terms of what you can do as an individual, I think ultimately it's first and foremost is developing an awareness, right? And then based upon having an awareness, it's all about having an understanding for your awareness, and then more. So what are you going to then do with that, right? But I think that ultimately it should always be from a place of, it's educate yourself, do your own research. Don't just ultimately feel like if you hear 100 people saying, well, this is how this such thing worked and whatever the case may be, then that's the die all end all. No. So ideally, it's always more so is to get you to a place to be a why seeker, right? Not necessarily saying that you have to feel like, everything is not necessarily real in a sense, right? Because we can't, in terms of if we can't necessarily get to the why behind it per se, but then when we just think about most of the things everything that we understand to know to be a thing we were exposed to it, right? So nothing about what we know, we just naturally experience it for the first time. Everything that we know, we were conditioned to it. We were shown to it through someone else, right? So if we understand that then simply means that, right, if we could how do we get to the point to where we are how do we authenticate anything that we see, right? We could do it through science, right, and other methods depending upon what it is that you're trying to figure out, 1 + 1, and how do we get to the answer that equals 2, right? So I pretty much say all of that then to say this simply, right? I feel like in order for us to really truly as a collective take that next step, right, you then have to ask yourself first and foremost, ultimately, once you feel like if you're to that point, and if that's something that you feel like is something that is a greater calling, right? Again, right, we this the one thing that tends to keep all of us preoccupied most of the time is money, right? So a lot of the times, unfortunately, a lot of our decisions stop short because then we start thinking about, well, the moment I might cross that line, certain resources start to get cut off. So a lot of the times we mean well, but because of that, and when we think about how that impacts how we live, obviously you're going to make a decision based upon it, right? So ultimately, we got to make decisions based upon your reality, right? And that's just what it is. That's what it comes down to, right? So now, based upon that, I feel as though it gets to a point as a people, right? You can understand the conditioning that you're then forced to live in based upon this reality that we in, and then you're going to then say to yourself, well, you know what? Is it worth it, right? Where do I get from there, right? We see history, right? So if we are literally still after 400 years talking about things that has happened to us 400 years ago, what is that telling us? Clearly, whatever we have been doing, it ain't making a difference, right? So at the end of the day, ultimately, based upon where I'm at, I'm like, well, hey, if you want to see change, you have to do things differently, right? So this is ultimately where I'm at, right? Educate yourself. Try to understand things. Don't just settle for what someone might be presenting you. Because at the end of the day, who's to say that that person is not operating from a particular agenda, and the agenda is to keep you in your captivity?
Said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. That was good.
That was pretty good, man. Yeah.
Thought I was gonna have a
Mhm.
rebuttal, but you kind of cleared it up at the end there for me, so I didn't have much to say. But I agree. I definitely do agree. I mean, educating yourself and really understanding where we came from and where you want to be as an individual is key, right? If you're kind of fine with the way that things are for you, then I guess stick with it. But on the inside, I feel like we all feel like, things have to be different. This is not what I was put on this earth to do, right? Wake up, go to work, come home, do the same thing every day. I mean, if you're having fun with that, you love that, continue to do what you got to do. But if not, and you seek change, then you need to do your research and make those adjustments and start doing what you have to do for you and your family. Because, I think one of the best points you made always, when you do everything and it's solely because of money, you don't feel good about it, right? You might feel like, but at the end of the day, you don't. It's not a great feeling. You always feel like I really just did this because of money. Because if you took money out of most equations, your decision making would be different. You wouldn't make that same decisions. All these people going to work, whether or not how they feel about COVID or not. Guess what? If money was out of that equation, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't put themselves at risk, right? If they feel like, oh, well, I'm going to wake up and go work in this hospital, wake up and go work in this job that I feel like I'm more at risk, would you still do that if money wasn't an option? Now, I'm not saying we all have the ability to just take money out of the equation and kind of move forward, but I'm saying we can do research and find different ways for us to make money and grow us, right? Versus building up something else, which is kind of what we're really, really good at doing, right? And why is that? Why are we good at that? Because I feel like businesses need us, right? These companies need us. They use us. They use our abilities to get with it. I mean, really and truly, America's made on the backbone of who? Right? So at the end of the day, people need us to kind of keep that going so that, they keep us under that, right? They start us at the beginning. When you listen to all these rap songs, when they talk about making money, doing this, you got to be a basketball player or really just a basketball player or a rapper. What else could you do, right? That's all you see growing up as a black man in America. You
Facts.
don't see, no one says to you, hey, listen, you can be a doctor, you can be a scientist, you can be anything you want to be. That's not really portrayed as much as it should be. I'm not knocking basketball players or athletes or or rappers, but I'm saying at the end of the day, we need to open up our eyes more and really kind of expose our kids and really expose them to that, because if that's all they see, if they don't become that, then they're stuck in this 9 to 5 system.
Yeah, that's well put, man. And it goes back to the fact that we, like you say, we have to start teaching our kids that, it's not just that avenue. There's more aspects. You could start your own business. You know what I mean? That's an option too. We could get to the point, because that right there will help towards to bridge the gap of generational wealth. And when it comes to money in a conversation, like you said, it don't feel right, bro. I agree with you on that. And we have to do things, even though I feel like if you get to the point where money wasn't money. I say this a lot, where if money never really exists, how would life would be? You know, how would life be? We would have some form of currency which would exist, but at the same time, would people act the way that they are now? Would they do the same things? I doubt it. I think you would do more of what you
Fact.
like or what you love. I think you would gravitate towards the things that you love, but because we just do things because what, I have to keep a roof over my head, so I'm gonna go to this job that I don't like, and I complain to my friends about it every day. And even though I complain about it, I'm not doing anything to change it. I just complain about it because that's all I know. You got to think about that. That's really all some people know. They don't know. It's like, okay, I'll ask the question of like, okay, so how can you make some extra money? They'll be like, oh, I'll get another job. You barely even have time for one job. You want to get another one? You see what I'm saying? So just to think outside the box, it goes back to what Life First was saying. Pretty much do the research. You can, let's go online and look up another way to make money. It's not always, oh, let's get a job so I can have two jobs. You have two jobs now, right? That means that your time is being spent on helping somebody building something for them.
Fact.
How is that benefiting
Mm,
you? How is that really benefiting you other than you being able to pay for your bills? Period.
mm.
Point blank. Period. That was my lesson from the whole COVID thing. Being in the house, I'm like, nah. One source of income, that's not the wave. That's what we need to work on in our community. Multiple sources of income.
That's a fact.
I'm not saying that, yeah, your 9 to 5 is fine, but having multiple sources, because when the first of the month comes, you got to pay those bills. That second income coming in, you're like, yeah, there you go. So that's something I think that we should work on in our community, is building multiple sources of incomes, and not just thinking that when I say multiple source of incomes, like, oh, let me get 3 jobs. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Build some.
And even right, just to build on that too, right? So you figure within our community as we build, right? Going back to the narrative, right? Going back to some of the things that we could do to start progressing, to start moving that conversation, start moving that perception forward. It's showing it within our community because apparently we're lacking it, right? Because that's the narrative that they keep going back to, right? And how that's illustrated sometimes could be through the lens of someone illustrated self-hate. And most of the times those are the people who they tend to put in front of a camera and then be like, yeah, go for it, right? And hey, it is what it is. Ultimately, we understand that those things that exist in each community, not only ours, but ours is the ones that tend to always be on the front of everything, right? But needless to say, again, it's all about us as a people, and in order for us to start to really start to move that perception again, we need to again as a collective change those narratives. We know the narrative is changed, right? But now we need to make that presence be sound. And how we're going to do it is we need to start detaching ourselves from some of these other communities that we know for a fact they do not spend their dollars in our community, right? Going back to what you were saying, Kay, right? We need to start building group economics, right? So that we can start doing what? Building back entities within our community, so we can start doing what? Spending money back amongst ourselves. So even when you think about it, right? Nowadays, right, we don't even have a community anymore, if you really think of it, right? So we have a place that we stay in, but it's not our community, right? When you look around, everything is different. Everything is different. Your store that you used to go to when you was a little buck coming up, that ain't there anymore. And if it is, the owners ain't there anymore. And right, so how convenient is that, right? So, so I think it's essential because clearly we have a lot of money that we generate within our community. So that's the perception. Is always made it seem like we spend outside our community, but no, we're not. We're spending right in our communities, but that money's going to places that into groups that they do not spend it back where they take it from, and that's just what it is. So we just got to stop that, man, and understand that. Right, as a people, right, we know, ultimately what's in our hearts. We know, who we are as a people, and we just have to just start moving with that sense of energy and with that sense of urgency.
We could talk about. And I feel like in terms of that, a lot of people may not necessarily even know where to start in terms of, okay, I hear this guy on YouTube, he's talking about multiple source of income. Like, dude, all I know is to work. That's all I ever do. I don't, it's what my parents do. It's what my grandparents did. I don't know nothing else. But in terms of that, for that person, I'm saying, hey, do the research, go online, type in how can I make $1,000 in a day? That's the easy question. You know what I mean? And then you'll go on there, you do your research, and next thing you know, write down the list. Next thing you know, you can do one or two things off of that without even having to go to work. You can do that at your house. There's people that are making millions of dollars from their house. They don't even, all they do is just set up in a online store or something along the lines like that. And then you can get it to a part where it's just automated. You don't even have to do nothing. All you have to do is collect checks. Like, think about that. So, for me hearing that, you don't know how to do it, I don't think you tried. I don't think you tried yet. So if you tell me you don't know how, I don't believe that. I refuse to believe that. So, what I mean, in terms of that, it's just got to put the work in. You got the time. If you have time to sit down and watch a whole series on Netflix, you got the time.
Right.
You definitely got the time. If you got the time to scroll on Instagram, go check your screen time. All that time that you spend on Instagram, you got the time, I'm telling you. So, I'm just saying, in terms of that, we have so much ways to make money that, there's no excuse.
Thought about one other thing, right? It's with our upbringings when you just said like your parents knew how to, they worked and your grandparents, that's all they did was work. But it's very interesting, right? I feel like in our community, right? You like in the not our community, right? They'll have lemonade stands. You don't see that in the black community, right? They'll come out, they'll have lemonade stands. Then their parents are teaching them how to be entrepreneurs, right? Go out there, sell that, making money, do your thing. What we call it is hustling. Hustling has a negative kind of energy around it. It's like, ooh, you can't go out and hustle. Hustle automatically goes towards drugs or towards something very negative, right? What society will call negative, right? But it's never like, oh, well, no, you should just go out there and hustle and do what you have to do. But then your parents will say, well, no, you need to get a job. You need to go fill out applications. You need to go do this and not knocking that, but that's what they were taught, right? And that's what their parents were taught. You have to come up and we push that on our kids. It's like it was pushed on us, I say, not on our kids, but it was forced into us. You have to have a job. You have to go make money. Make $40,000 a year. That's what you need to hit. Once you hit that, you're golden. We all know $40,000 ain't doing shit now. Well, nothing. I shouldn't say shit, but that's not doing anything, right? So it's very interesting. I feel like with the upbringings, it's different, right? Instead of saying, well, hey, I'm going to have my son go to work with me and let me kind of show him what I do. And when I say work, I mean my own business, right? It's no, go out there, fill out an application and see how you can build another company up. And I think we have to just kind of shift the way of thinking where it's like, okay, well, listen, we all have sons. What can I do to show my son that he doesn't have to fill out an application or put his name or go through an interview and convince somebody in a company that I'm worthy enough to join their company. They're going to give me a dollar amount that now I'm exchanging my hour of my life for a dollar amount that we have been conditionalized to feel like, oh, this is what I'm worth. I'm worth this dollar amount. But guarantee if one of your friends said, hey, man, I'm going to give you the same dollar amount to come with me, all of a sudden it's, ooh, nah, man, I'm not going to do that. You're looking at your buddy all funny, but that's the same dollar amount you give a company and you exchange it for hours at a time that you sit, stand, walk, pick up, put stuff, anything. But look how crazy that is. Because I get a check and I'm on the grid and I'm getting taxes pulled out, that means that that's an honorable check. Versus, right, saying, hey, let's all start something, can be the same amount of money, but we're looking at it different. Perception, right? It's how we kind of, we're seeing everything really funny, right? And it really starts at a young age and how we get kind of pulled up, right? And everyone, and you go back to the educating yourself and fully understanding that at the end of the day, no one's ever been free working for any company, right? You're binded by that company's rules, that company's regulations, and how they're going to do stuff. And at any given time, they can look at you and say, see you later. Then what? Then you go fill out an application, go work for another company and invest all this time into that company until they do that, or you retire. Then you retire, and then what? I've just showed my kid that I could work 35 years in a row, 2 or 3 different companies, and I have nothing to show for it. But what, a couple $1,000 in the bank and I have a retirement plan? Nothing. It's actually, in my opinion, it's sickening. It's like, we're sick. If you really sit back and really understand, it doesn't make any sense. And we constantly just push ourselves into that system. And we feel that someday, or all of a sudden, they're going to come back and the masses are going to say, these guys are doing a great job. You know what? Let's start being fair, or let's start doing what needs to be done. Let's start giving them the opportunity, or let's start doing what we need to do for them, giving them their ultimate freedom. But we don't get that. And we'll never get that. You have to take that, right? That's why you see like certain people, I feel like I look at them and, we say, oh, they're weird or they're this, but people that are sure about themselves, that's why they're so successful, because they don't worry about all the other stuff, man. All the what this person says, what that person says, what society thinks I should be, how I should do this, how I should do that. People that make you, sometimes it makes you uncomfortable because they're just so themselves. They don't care. But that's sometimes where we have to kind of embrace that. Be you. Because you are you. If you truly dig in and really understand that, sky's the limit. Doesn't matter. Even this right now, this isn't me. I know I would go on a video. I wouldn't be doing this stuff. But at the end of the day, when I say it isn't me, it isn't the old me. It wasn't the stuff that I would have been like, oh, I would do this. I'll go talk and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm loving it. I'm expressing myself the way, I get to say what how I feel and how I truly feel, like how life is for me. This is unbelievable, right? And unless you make yourself a little uncomfortable, you're really never going to grow. If we're going to just continue to do the same exact things, we're going to be stuck in this little box and stay right there and nothing changes. So if I got to make myself a little uncomfortable every single day, I feel like I'll grow a little bit every single day. And life will always be better because I'm living my truth. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that, yeah.
That's what you call
so,
it in the air right there. Boom. Yeah. Boom.